Welcome to Let's Talk AI, Trust, Innovation, People, powered by EY.ai, right here on businesstech.co.za. I'm your host, Michael Avery, and today we're kicking off this new series on moving the conversation beyond the AI hype into the world of practical implementation and business value with Ajen Sita, the CEO of EY Africa. And Ajen, if you're only using AI to edit selfies or find dinner recipes, you're clearly not getting the full value from it, because it is an extremely powerful, revolutionary technology. And we just see the way it's driving share markets and the prices of some companies that provide chips like NVIDIA. But let's dive in. I think many businesses are curious about integrating AI tech, but might be unsure of the benefits. So firstly, could you just share how AI can bring tangible advantages to businesses and why they should consider implementing it into their operations today?
Hey, Michael, nice being with you. If we think back to the turn of the century as we were experiencing the dot-com boom and people were migrating onto web-based platforms, it was a fundamental change for so many businesses in terms of just thinking about their strategy, what they did, how they organized themselves, how they served their clients. And it radically changed how they also interacted with their own people. What AI is doing is this is another one of those revolutions that's happening right in front of us. Everything that we've taken for granted, perhaps about business strategy, about the technology we use, how we interact with our customers, or how people even engage with the organization, is going through a fundamental rethink at the very moment that we're in. What AI does is now putting huge amounts of data, analytics, technology in the hands of users in a much more accessible way than would have been possible a couple of years ago, and is now really allowing for tremendous changes in the kinds of information we handle and our ability to make bigger decisions faster.
And I think your point that you raised there about the technology now packaged in a way that ordinary folk like myself can use is an important one, because we've been talking about artificial intelligence, large language models, machine learning for years now. One gets the sense, but the real revolution has come in the interface. And I think ChatGPT is the one that's probably most well known, but there are many AI tools out there. And if you're only using ChatGPT, I think you've just scratched the surface. But I think it also comes with a set of challenges and concerns, particularly around being replaced by machines. If you read Harari, for example, could you just shed some light on some of the common fears and the obstacles that businesses might face if they're deciding to adopt this technology, and how EY guides them to navigate and overcome these hurdles?
Yeah, Michael, I think it's important. As much as there's such a huge opportunity and a transformation for businesses, it obviously comes with some risks. And I'd say, just like any change, any new technology that we've experienced over the last 20 years, when we first interact with this, it is all new. And so there's a number of things that companies do need to think about. So it starts with, let's think about our people. When you think about most organizations, how many people are trained in the use of technology and software? How many people can actually interact with AI or even the likes of a ChatGPT? So there's a massive need for training and education for organizations right across the world, so that we empower people with the language, with the skills, with the ability to actually interact with these tools and technology. Of course, there's a fear about the jobs concern. Will AI displace jobs? And much like we've seen with technology adoptions in the past, there's no doubt that AI will change jobs. And we've got to think about what the new jobs that we'll create, but also how humans and AI, how will they interact? And that's a whole topic on its own. When your colleague is no longer, a physical person, but your colleague this time is a piece of technology who's even been given a name. So there's some serious rethink about organizations and how people execute their work. The other factor to consider is this whole topic of data privacy and the ethics of using AI. So data, of course, AI functions on the basis of using data from large and varied data sources. And so many companies will grapple with, making their private data available in public environments, because that's where they really are getting competitive differentiation from. So there's this big debate about public versus private AI tools, technologies, and cloud, and companies are going to have to
Yeah.
understand that. And then, of course, the ethical topics around how does the AI actually make decisions, and what is that interaction between the machine and humans in terms of ultimate actions that will be taken. How much do we defer to what the machine tells us to do?
The data privacy one really struck a chord at a conference I was facilitating recently for the Chartered Institute of Business Accountants. And they were worried that they're dealing with their clients' very sensitive business data from a tax perspective. And can they just upload that into a chat GPT, for example, where we know, unless you've got the paid for subscription, there isn't much protection around that data. So these are very important questions that businesses are going to have to grapple with in order to extract that value. Some may wonder, Jen, whether or not it's too early to fully invest in AI. Maybe it's just a bit too buzzy right now. Let's rather take a wait and see approach and be kind of the fast the adopters after everyone's been early adopters. How do you see the current landscape? I mean, is it too early?
Well, let's start by saying I think a number of different models are going to emerge and they will coexist. You're going to find organizations using private cloud environments and running their own large language models internally so that they have better control over the data. And then you're going to find, large service providers offering public cloud infrastructure, and people are happy to use that kind of infrastructure. And typically, you're going to find that in the consumer space, in the travel space, where you really are using the technology to make information about, financial decisions, where to go on holiday, or as you said, what recipe to find, and that's largely in the public domain. That's okay. But when you're dealing with sensitive corporate data, data that's otherwise seen as competitive, insight or information, you are likely to see companies use private clouds or private AI tools and technologies in order to train them on their own data and use that for their own decision making. So I think we're going to see different tools and different models emerge. What is clear is doing nothing is not an option. Your question around is it too early? With all technologies, there's no doubt that the first movers are going to be the ones who will maximize the use of the technology, and the rest are going to be consumers of what these guys have created. If we see some of the large deals being done, whether it was the Microsoft Chat GPT deal, value in excess of $10 billion, there's some big investments going into the tools, into the technology. There's a clear view that AI will radically transform the way we work. And I think it's incumbent on all companies to think about their businesses today and understand all aspects of what will change so that you're ready for this change.
Yeah, it reminds me of what Michael Jordan was saying at the launch of their new AI private equity fund. He said, I mean, you just mentioned those big deals in the creators of these large language models, the open AIs of this world. He said, Michael, that's not really where we're looking. We think businesses that adopt AI are going to revolutionize the industries that they are currently operating in. That's where we see the opportunity. We want to invest in those businesses that are the early adopters, that revolutionize the way they've been doing things. So it just shows you where the smart money is going as well. But I want to come back to the point about preparing your people, because I think that's going to be the key to unlocking this, training and preparing your staff for the integration of these new technologies. What strategies have you found to be most effective in ensuring a smoother transition, and how does EY approach this aspect?
Learning, and more learning. That's all I can say at this point. If we look in the world today, there aren't many people who understand or can even describe how AI functions, what are its potential use cases, how to actually even do the coding so organizations can transform either their strategy, their business models, or draw insights out of it, right? So the number of people out there in the world today who can even operate, can I call it operate AI as we understand it, are so few. So I think the first thing that all companies really need to think about when it comes to their people is how are you going to invest in learning programs, in the education and upskilling of your workforce. This is not one where you're easily going to go into the market and simply recruit to solve your problems. So the first thing is training your own people to understand the technology and the potential applications. The second is actually to get your people involved. The best sources of ideas to transform and use AI in your own organization is going to be your own people. And I think the leading companies, progressive companies, are really rethinking their organizational culture around this. How do you bring young and old people who are experienced in the business, people who are experienced in the technical aspects, and people who are far more experienced with technology? How do you bring them together? So you've got teams who are ideating around internal and external use cases. People who are thinking about how you can disrupt the organization from within. Because there's no doubt there are startups, there are companies on the outside who are now, with the access to the AI and the technology that comes with it, they're able to compete with heritage businesses, with established businesses, because they now have access, you might say, to the same data, to the same information, without all of that legacy investment and capital. So your competitors are going to come from different places, business models are going to change. So I'd strongly be advising the investment in learning for people.
Yeah, that is the bridge over the moat that you just mentioned. That AI is really building for your competitors to now storm the castle. So if you're not thinking about what you're going to do to try and deepen the moat, or maybe build higher walls, investing in your staff and skills has got to be right at the center of how you do that. Back to the question on job displacement, particularly in the South African context, Ajen, I just feel like this is going to be one of the most important components for companies to get right, because we have such deep inequality, such high unemployment. And when you think about AI and the potential here to potentially displace jobs, how does AI, too many two-letter acronyms, how does EY address this issue? And what sort of proactive measures are taken to safeguard employee job security?
Well, firstly, let's acknowledge that AI is a global phenomenon. So no country can afford to be left behind. So if we're thinking, let's, allow other countries to go ahead, they'll invest, and we'll look at labor in a very traditional way, or look at our people and their relationship with work in a very traditional way. In fact, that strategy will only make sure that those people do in fact lose those jobs. Because as technology becomes more pervasive, these jobs are going to change. I think it's incumbent on companies, on governments, on schools, universities, all to really think through the whole education ecosystem and make sure from a very early stage we're teaching computer literacy at its most basic, but that we're including education on artificial intelligence every step of the way in the education ecosystem, and that we can use this technology, given how new it is in the world today. Could we even create some level of specialization or some uniqueness about the numbers of people that we can create who are AI literate, so that not only is it an advantage for the companies in South Africa where we operate, but indeed is an advantage for the country on a global scale. So I think this, if you approach it as on an opportunity lens, I think this is a time and a moment in history where we can invest in technology and make that available to the rest of the world. Our view at EY is that our clients will be investing in transforming their businesses. Our clients want to compete with the best businesses on a global basis. And if we're going to respond to that, we've got to make sure that our people are sufficiently trained in the technologies, that they understand what is the best of what is available in the world, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and how do you use the technology to transform existing business models. So we really want to partner with our clients, who include government, by the way, to ensure that we're changing society for the better by using these new technologies.
And I hope by doing that as well, we then unleash the power of human creativity, of relationship building, of building our businesses in those areas as well, while some of those other tasks that are better suited to AI that require a high cognition speeds or are very repetitive can then free up that natural human talent so that you've got lying very often dormant inside an organization. So it is a big opportunity. I think governance, obviously, in AI investments is paramount. So how do you structure your governance in EY to guide decision making in AI technologies to ensure that it aligns with your overall business strategy?
Well, Michael, there's a few things to consider here. Firstly, AI, it has to start with companies thinking about the role of the technology and its use cases in context of its business strategy. So how does this impact your choice of strategy, the markets in which you compete, your competitor set, how you actually deliver your services to your clients? So that's the starting point. We then ask ourselves questions around how do we need to transform as an organization? How do we use AI to change the way we run our own business and how our people serve our clients? The second is how do we help our clients actually transform their businesses? So we're actually looking at an entire ecosystem here. And so what we're having to do is rethink our traditional forms of governance, and as opposed to treating this just like a project or a side project, you've got to embed the thinking about AI into the regular governance over your entire organization, because you'll see AI infused at the point of recruitment, at developing people, at serving clients, at optimizing capital and providing returns for your shareholders. It's in the entire value chain. So when you think about governance, you've got to think about it holistically and don't treat it just like some new project in the organization.
And in that way, I think you've almost got to incorporate it into the DNA of your business strategy at the very center of that decision-making process. You mentioned the ethical
And Michael,
considerations.
you you
Yeah.
you talked about embedding it into your strategy. It is so fundamental, this, because it will challenge many organizations to rethink their culture, their operating style. When we think what AI is doing is providing the data of the organization or publicly available data in a very easily accessible format to everyone in the organization. Now, today, many companies are structured around hierarchy or rigid systems or processes and decision-making protocols. What AI does is it disrupts all of that because it now truly empowers your end user, a regular staff member, with full information and transparency on all systems and all processes and all the information that is held within that organization. Now, that is a big culture shift for organizations. And this is the starting point, I think, for companies not only to think about how do we use this technology around strategy, around customer experience, but how it will also need to drive change in culture in the organization.
Wow, big considerations for businesses to really to mull over, to think about.
Absolutely.
If this is going to change fundamentally how we approach strategy, how we approach culture, you really have to be thinking quite deeply about all of these things and understand the technology as well. And I'm sure many executives might say they don't have the specialization, but you need, at least as you said earlier, a base level of understanding of the artificial intelligence technology underpins in order to make these decisions. And then the ethical considerations, as you mentioned earlier, the data and the fact, as that sometimes large language models may be trained on data that had inherent bias in it. And so we might repeat that bias. What do you see as the primary ethical challenges when it comes to data use, and how should organizations approach and tackle the challenge of ethics in AI?
Yeah, Michael, this is a fundamental thing. And it'll come down to something very basic, this word trust. if this technology is going to, gain the momentum that everyone's talking about, if it's going to truly transform a business and make a real difference, it's fundamental that organizations are able to establish trust with the technology very, very early on. So if we think about, again, what are the components that make for a successful AI program in any organization? If we simplify it, you'd say the first thing is you need data and you need lots of it. The second is you need the algorithms. So that's the coding that smart programmers are able to do to get what you need out of that data. And of course, thirdly, we know we need serious investment in the right processing capabilities and the right chips to be able to manage this kind of data. Now, if you think about it, this word trust, it starts at its basic. Would a consumer look at the organization and say, do I trust this organization? And that, you would have said, is true before AI and after AI, the existing questions of, do I trust the organization? The second question now is, do I trust the data? It's a fundamental ingredient or input on which AI thrives and survives, is the data. So where's this data from? How is it secured? What are the privacy aspects of it? How do you credit the owners of the data? So lots of questions around data. Then the algorithms. How do I trust the algorithm that this technology is producing? So what went into the design of the algorithm? Who designed it? Who determined that that should be the algorithm? How did they get to those conclusions and decisions? And so at every one of these points, organizations are going to have to think about, what is it, as I approach this, builds trust, and what can erode trust? And you're going to have to think very specifically, because it's easy to fall into the trap of, this is just a technology that I plug into the existing systems of the organization, get it to interact with the rest of my systems and move on. But you can very easily destroy trust if your users figure out that there's a lot of bias built into your systems.
Yeah, and here be dragons, as they say. Data privacy and compliance are also a critical aspect. But when it comes to the use case, I think this is really where the rubber hits the road for most business executives looking to pull the trigger potentially on an AI project or introducing AI into the organization, as they look to make it a centerpiece of their strategic DNA. What approach does EY take? Can you just share some of the factors that you consider to ensure effectiveness and value for both the business and its stakeholders?
Yeah, this is a great question, Michael, because it's fair to say the tools and technology, is out there right now, and is rapidly going innovation and speed, and is transforming, and its capabilities are improving on a daily basis. But if you speak to most companies, most business leaders, the area that most people are struggling with is identifying the appropriate use cases for their organizations, where to deploy it. And clearly, this is an area that every company will have to figure it out for themselves. At EY, our approach has really been to create cross-functional teams, people who come out of different parts of our business, who serve different industry segments of the market. So people who bring very diverse backgrounds and perspectives. We've brought them together with individuals who understand the technology, so the potential of what data is available, what processing capabilities are available, the understanding of data privacy and the ethical considerations. And we've brought these two teams together to really challenge themselves to think about it, looking at different industries, what the potential use cases could be. And so we've started running innovation challenges internally in our own organization, where we have these cross-functional teams from across the organizations really putting forward cases, and we're using that, in a simple framework to ask ourselves, which of these use cases transform EY, which transform our clients' businesses, and which ones transform society. And of course, from there you can apply the regular metrics of, what's the ROI, what's the investment capital, what's the impact, regular ROI that you'd apply to any other project to understand whether this is one you want to go forward or not. The critical thing here is you've got to start experimenting. You've got to start ideating. You've got to start putting the right people in the room who are able to translate a strong understanding of the existing business with the technology and bringing the two together.
So, how do you see that all coming together in the context of the way the audit profession is changing? Because we know there's continued evolution between audit on the one side, advisory on the other, calls to maybe split the two, and calls also to deconcentrate all of these key risks, challenges, opportunities, call them what you will, that the profession is currently facing. How do you see this technology plugging into that milieu of this rapidly changing environment for the audit profession?
I think AI provides tremendous opportunities for the audit profession. Again, if you think about it at all three levels, how some of the large accounting firms, audit firms, how they run their own business, and second, how they interact with their clients, and largely how you make a difference to society as a whole. What the tools and technology is going to allow us to do is really approach the data of our clients, the data that's involved in a typical audit assignment, in a totally different way to what we do today. Far higher levels of automation, greater volumes of data than you've ever done before. You might even argue with some of the new tools, auditors might be able to look at 100% of client transaction data or client populations, as opposed to relying only on sampling techniques that I might have done in the past. What you can also now do is use your very limited and high value skills that you have in your people and apply it to the judgmental areas of the audit, the riskier areas of the audit, and allow the technology to do more of the routine, the mundane stuff, and apply your best people to the highest value parts of what they do. So again, this is an area where, again, I would say to you, we're limited by our own imagination, the art of the possible. As companies automate more, as data becomes more accessible, there's no doubt we'll be able to radically transform the way audits are actually executed. Your net result, I think, greater efficiency in the audit. You do the same job a lot faster, so productivity levels are going to go up. Second, I think substantial increases in audit quality, because you're now looking at full data sets or 100% populations. Maybe anecdotally, Michael, I'd say to you, if you thought about auditing in the past, is using a torch in your hand and walking around in the dark looking for things that might have gone wrong, you now can walk into the room and switch the lights on and see the whole room. So it's just a totally new, accessible approach that will dramatically improve the quality of our audits.
And I can imagine dramatically improve the experience for the professionals as well, who are now moved up to higher order thinking work and more critical work. And that's really what drives professionals on and keeps them motivated and leads to higher levels of retention. All great for the organization. Just lastly, Ajen, shifting our focus to Africa as a region, what do you see as the most significant challenges and opportunities for AI adoption in Africa? And how can Africa think about leveraging AI to drive innovation and growth?
Well, I came back to the, keeping it at its most basic level. I would say to you, for successful AI implementation in any country or company, you need the right data, you need the right algorithms, and you need the processing speed. If we have these three things and they coexist with any organization that is looking at its strategy, its geographic area of operation, regulatory environments, any number of other regulations or rules that drive company behavior, you come back to these three things. If as a continent we can think about how we collect, organize, store our data, how we able to move more of our data into the cloud so that it's more accessible to larger numbers of businesses and society as a whole. If we can invest in creating the skills that we require in data scientists, programmers, cloud operators, people with the right skills that can operate the AI technology and in fact write the algorithms that the tools need, I think those investments in people and technology and how we think about data presents a huge opportunity for Africa. We've shown in the past when we moved from analog phones, we went straight into the mobile phone era. We leapfrog much of technology. This is another opportunity for Africa to leapfrog, but it starts with making those very basic investments.
Yeah, and that's why we are proud to partner with you on this series. Let's talk AI, trust, innovation, people. Ajen Sita, thank you very much for sharing those profound insights with us today.